Have our people been told?
They have. And soon, the world.
Commander, will they follow?
Inquisition, will you follow? Will you fight? Will we triumph? Your leader, your herald, your Inquisitor!
Dragon Age Inquisition was a game Bioware needed, or more specifically that Aaron Flynn, who is now in charge of Bioware now that doctors have left the company, needed desperately to convince EA that the path he was trying to take, that he is trying to take the company on, is worthwhile. What he wants is games with longer development time, where developers have the necessary resources, the necessary time to make the games that they want, to put in the quality in the games that they desire, instead of the rush jobs that we've gotten with Mass Effect 3, Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age Awakening. Yes, all three of those games were rush jobs. Dragon Age Origins wasn't a rush job, but also had its own issues. Dragon Age Origins had a troubled development cycle. They had to redo certain areas from scratch, and to be honest, it wasn't really that great of a game. It was mediocre, decent at best. It has some interesting side characters, it had some interesting side stories, but overall I'd call it a pretty mediocre game. Gameplay was terrible by design, the balance was non-existent. The same can be applied to Awakening, though Awakening had a better main story and very good characters as well, but had similar issues in terms of gameplay design and issues with the lore, issues with the story, and so on and so forth. So the Dragon Age series has had issues, and Bioware in general has had issues. You can thank the doctors who left Bioware, thank EA for that. Yes, EA forced them to quit. Do you really think that they just quit the job and quit gaming development on their own after the failures of Dragon Age 2 and Mass Effect 3? Come on, people. Really, just making a point here. They were forced out by Electronic Arts, probably given a copious amount of cash to keep their mouths shut and praise EA instead of talking about the truth. So that's what happened, and I'm glad they left. They were taking the company down the drain, and I think Aaron Flynn has a good vision for where the company should be at. Anyway, so this was a test. Did he pass it? I'd say he did, actually. I say that Dragon Age Inquisition is a fairly good game. Does it have problems? Yes and no. On its own, if I were to take it as a standalone game, I'd say Dragon Age Dragon Age Inquisition is a very good game. But the problem is it respects the lore of the Dragon Age universe. And that's kind of an issue because there's a lot of idiocy in the Dragon Age universe. There's a lot of stupid characters, badly written lore, and yet they want to be consistent within that universe. And because of that, the game kind of suffers. But it's a minor thing. Dragon Age Inquisition doesn't suffer from any major flaw. My opinion of the combat system is that it's Dragon Age 2 style, but somewhat improved. My opinion of the boss fights is the same as in Dragon Age 2. It's terrible that we have boss fights with so much HP. It's terrible that we have an MMO type boss fight in a single player game. It's okay to include a boss fight with a huge amount of HP in an MMO, but it's not okay to do so for a single player game. Very different experiences. Though I would strongly argue against the notion that Dragon Age Inquisition is an MMO game, or that it has MMO style quests. Sure, it might strike you as very similar, but as someone who has played MMOs quite a bit, I have to tell you two things. One, it's very different. Like, the grinding in an MMO is far, far worse than anything you have to do in Dragon Age Inquisition, and you don't have to do it in Dragon Age Inquisition. That's kind of the point. You don't need to do it. You only need a certain amount of power, then you can ignore it. You do not need to do this. I need to emphasize this. You don't need to do it for story missions. You gain some operations as a result of it. I guess you can use that power. You gain influence, which gives you perks. It's just more of a gameplay benefit than any tangible story impact, although you gain approval if you do certain tasks throughout the world for your companions. But ultimately, as I said, it's just it's not something that has a huge impact, so you don't need to do it. you can just play the game, get the power, the bare minimum of power that you require, and you can get through it like that. You can rush through the game. Hell, you can complete the game without ever stepping foot in certain areas. I have the end in sight. I haven't completed the game fully. I haven't done the final mission. The reason I haven't done so is because I have 3 areas and I'm going for a completionist playthrough of Dragon Age Inquisition, and I want to complete 3 areas that I have, one of which I have barely stepped foot in, the other 2 I haven't touched at all. So that's where I am at the moment in terms of Dragon Age Inquisition. Completed every single main story quest line besides the final mission. Once I do that, I'll complete the game. There are some things to be said about the ending from what I hear, but I'll make a separate video to talk about that once I actually beat it. But my opinion of the overall game will not change all that much. I think it's really good. I think despite the issues, the balance issues and the combat, I still think it's pretty enjoyable to play. I enjoy exploring the world. I enjoy fighting monsters in the world, and it's better balanced than Dragon Age 2. I'll give it that much. It's far better balanced than Origins or Dragon Age 2. Or even Mass Effect 2 or 3, it's far better balanced than those games. Those games could be really annoying pieces of shit. The gameplay is not Bioware's forte, so to speak. Although I think the world might be too large, too many areas. They could have trimmed some of them down and focused more on quality, because there are small issues like clipping issues, cinematic issues, bugs and glitches, and so on and so forth. Those issues kind of take away from the experience. Not by much, but they are there. And I'm annoyed by Bioware locking cinematics and dialogues to 30, because apparently they would have issues otherwise. But if you use a fix to set the frame rate lock to 60 instead of 30, you still have some annoyances to deal with because of the lock, but they're far less prominent. So that's a solution. The biggest issue I actually have with the game is not related to the gameplay. It's not related to the world design or anything like that, or the bugs and glitches. It's related to the DRM. It's not enough that you need to be online if you want to use your keep saves. No, we have to include the Nouveau DRM. And there's been 3 games that have come out lately that have used the Nouveau DRM. We had Dragon Age Inquisition, we had FIFA 15, and we had Lords of the Fallen. And all of them had performance and stability issues, and all of them suffered. It's too much of a coincidence. All 3 games on 3 separate engines, I might add, by 3 separate developers. Even though FIFA is still published by EA, it's a different developer working on FIFA. You're telling me this is just a simple coincidence that I'm supposed to believe that the Nouveau doesn't impact performance? I even have a message from the executive producer of Lords of the Fallen that does confirm there is a performance drop due to the Nouveau. He claims it's minor, irrelevant, but no developer in the world would acknowledge that a DRM solution that they've used in their game would impact performance in a huge way. And I have to say this much: if you really think this is gonna stop pirates, it has stopped them for the moment, but the Nouveau will be cracked. Why do I say this? Because the Nouveau was used in GTA 4, and GTA 4 was indeed cracked. So it's just a matter of time. They will crack Dragon Age Inquisition. They probably didn't give a fuck about FIFA or Lords of the Fallen, but they will eventually crack Dragon Age Inquisition. It's just a matter of time. They did stop the pirates for a moment, but they kind of screwed their own consumers in the process. Well done. Yeah, and that's the biggest issue. On a story level, on the story aspect of the game, I am actually impressed by this. I'm not saying this lightly. I'm someone who has bashed the shit out of Bioware for their incompetency in terms of storytelling, in terms of the logical shit we've had to deal with in previous games. It's quite a lot on this channel, quite frequently in my playthroughs of Mass Effect, of Dragon Age games. I've done this. And yet I am quite impressed by the level of quality in Dragon Age's Inquisition story. Corypheus, yeah, forget about him. He's not really that relevant. But what he represents, his impact on the world by just existing, that's interesting. And it's more interesting to deal with things like the Templars, the mages. That's, I think, handled well to a certain extent, though they probably could have focused more on the Templar Mage War before forcing you to make a decision between the two of them. But one thing they did very well was the focus on religion. Like, religion plays a very big role in the story of Dragon Age Inquisition. It's a very prominent, I guess you could say, theme of Dragon Age's Inquisition story. Early on, far more prominent than later on, but it's always a constant. It's always something that plays a role. You are viewed as a messiah, in a sense, a messiah figure. It's as if Bioware realized, yeah, we know all our games are power trips, so let's go all in with this, and let's really focus on making this work. And they did that. I thought initially that, oh yeah, we're just gonna go full retard because we know exactly where we stand. But they actually did a pretty good job at making it believable. The way people view you as a messiah, the way the power trip, the rise to power works. You don't just become Inquisitor right off the bat. It takes some time. There are certain events, the way people view you, your choices, your perspective on certain things, including your religious views or lack thereof in terms of your religion. That all plays a role in the game. Your race, your gender, all of this plays a role in the game. They did a very good job with that.
But Kunari or not, I ask you to listen to what's been placed in my heart. I am the will of Our Lady manifest. I am the herald of Andraste. She sent me to remind you of your sacred duty. A shield against dark magic. Knights who will end the breach.
The religious debates that I've had in real life are represented fairly well in the game. Where I stand with regards to religion, I'm a Romanian Christian Orthodox. I'm not someone who goes to church very often. I do that once a year on Easter. That's really about my experience with religion. But I have had very, very long religious debates. I've had friends who were agnostic, friends who are atheists, so on and so forth, religious friends, and so on. And I've had debates on this subject. So I'm really glad they did this, though I know a lot of people probably will not care. Personally, I find it very interesting that Bioware did tackle the subject, and I have to praise them for the fact they did it in a very good way. They showed a lot of maturity. They tackled the subject, which is a very complex subject, I might add, in a very competent way. This shows that Bioware does still have competent writers, and for all the social justice warrior crap that's in the game, like, yeah, we have to have a transgendered character, yes, we have a gay romance, we have a lesbian romance, we have bisexual romances, they did a fairly good job at not pissing you off by including this, by including this kind of content. Like Dorian, for instance, is a perfect example. On the surface, he might strike you as a stereotypical gay, but he has a lot of things going for him as a character. So although he is a stereotypical gay, although he is a social justice warrior bullshit type character, he is still a very interesting character in his own right, and I actually like him quite a bit. I would have romanced him, in fact, if not for the fact that I found Josephine more interesting. They did a very good job with the romances as well. They realized not all romances need a sex scene or nudity, although they do have it. For the first time in Bioware game, we have tits, right? We have that in the game, and they even went with more nudity than The Witcher 2, so that's kind of saying something. We don't see naked male characters, but we do get to see a lot of them. Let me just put it like that. We don't see all of it, but we see most of them. That's my point. So they did a very good job with that. They did a good job with the romances, though there's still some cringe-worthy stuff in there with Cassandra as Josephine and all of them. Though there are some interesting romances, like with Iron Bull and all of that. So overall, I'd say good job. Also good job with the imports like Loghain and other things as well. Kirkwall, Sebastian, Hawk, Varric, all of this stuff. All of it was handled with great care and pretty well. I like the word table. I like how you are the leader of an Inquisition, and you do feel like a leader. You do have to make the difficult decisions, and you feel like shit after you make them. Some of these choices are not very easy. Do you sacrifice a number of soldiers to secure an alliance with someone, or do you keep those soldiers alive and sacrifice the alliance? That's not an easy choice to make. And when you do sacrifice those soldiers, which are not no-named grunts, these are people you know. These are people you talk to it, and you got to know them, and then you throw them to their deaths. It's as if, it's like Loghain said in Dragon Age Origins, you have to be close enough to your soldiers to know what they're risking, but far enough from them to be able to throw them away. And it's not as easy as it's made out to be. A decision in the game where I feel like shit after making it, that's a good game in my opinion, and I've been playing it a lot. And that kind of says volumes how I feel about the game. I think it's a good game. I think Bioware has a great deal of competent writing on a political, religious level, on having subtlety in the game, on having interesting characters, interesting stories, and even an interesting main story, despite Corypheus not being all that interesting, despite some idiotic shit, like the mages selling themselves into slavery and then becoming mindless puppets to Corypheus. Despite things like this, I will still argue to the death that Dragon Age Inquisition is one of the best games, one of the best RPGs that I've ever played. And this one, what I'm about to say is really difficult for me to admit, but I might end up liking this game more than I will like The Witcher 3. And the reason I say this, yes, I think The Witcher 3 will have a better world. Yes, I think there will probably be a more mature take on stories in The Witcher 3. But the thing is, I like being the leader of an organization. I like being involved in politics in a direct way. I like being the master manipulator, the chess master. And you can be that in Dragon Age Inquisition. You're not some imbecile.
You think you can keep him in power? Really? Will you sit by his throne and hold his hand to fend off the accusations of the court?
They took some very harsh lessons from the past. You're not playing an imbecile. You're playing a well-spoken, competent character. If you so desire, you can still play an imbecile if you prefer that, but you can't play someone that's ruthless, pragmatic, visionary, and a competent character. And you do feel like a chess master, like a competent leader. And that's something that Dragon Age Inquisition has going for it that Witcher will not have. For all that can be said about CD Projekt, the fact that they still shove Geralt down your throat and shove his personal friends, which I personally couldn't give a fuck about, to be honest, Dandelion, Triss, Zoltan, I couldn't give a shit about, is what really holds it back for me. I like The Witcher 1 for all its flaws. I liked it well enough because you could determine who Geralt was in terms of his personality. And then they started taking that away with The Witcher 2. And then The Witcher 3 is the main story is about hunting Geralt's loved ones, which I couldn't give a shit about, as I said. And that's probably why I like Dragon Age Inquisition more than The Witcher 3. Though I expect The Witcher 3 to have better graphics, perhaps a better story overall, but, you know, I have more agency in Inquisition. That's the word I was looking for. More agency. And kudos to Bioware. You've learned lessons from not only Dragon Age 2, you learned lessons from The Witcher 3, Witcher 2, which had the mature take on politics. You learned some very harsh lessons there, and implemented a very mature subject in your game, the subject of religion. Did a fairly competent job at tackling that. Then you tackled politics in a pretty good way. You tackled subterfuge, building a spy network, using the spy network. They did a fantastic job with choices on the war table, in my opinion, and with your advisors. It's text-based, but it works. It really works there. And they did a very good job at building a world. Although I think they could have done with fewer regions, I still think that they did a very good job overall. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna say this: buy this game. It's a good game. You might have issues. Let me say, it's not perfect. You might be annoyed by the gathering stuff. You might be annoyed by the collectible stuff. Though you don't have to do all of that. You only have to do a portion of it to get enough power to be able to unlock the story missions. Then you can just focus on those. But if you want to do the collectible stuff, it's there. I like exploring the world. I like finding these secrets. Just like I like doing that in Skyrim. What annoyed the shit out of me in Skyrim was the combat system. And the terrible story, the terrible characters, the fact the way you had conversations with that. So they learned things from Skyrim, they learned things from The Witcher 2 as well. Games that came out on the same year that Dragon Age 2 came out and kicked its ass in terms of overall quality. I'd say they even took some inspiration in terms of perhaps level design or world design from Dark Souls to a certain degree. I guess you could say that. Because Dark Souls is not exceptional of a game because of its combat. What makes Dark Souls exceptional as a game is the way it sucks you in as a player into this world, and it urges you to keep playing, and you keep playing, you keep getting sucked in. And I think there's a bit of that in Inquisition. Just a bit, not a huge amount, but just a bit of that is in there. The secrets, the tough bosses you find in secret areas, and so on and so forth. So, in closing this, welcome back, Bioware. We've missed you.